everyone. Welcome to today, Friday. We are going to be talking to Michael Kowalski about 5-element acupuncture. And I'm sorry I'm running a little bit behind schedule today. I had some really exciting projects and venues I was looking at today. So I'm super excited to talk to Michael Kowalski. I'm a big fan of 5 elements. Although I'm not a 5-element practitioner, I was trained in traditional Chinese medicine. That was what my school specialized in. So, Michael, I think I hear you.
Hi there, Natalia.
Hi. I don't see you on the video yet, but I can see, I can hear you.
So is there something I need to do on my end to help you? Do I start video? Is that what I need to do?
Yes, I think that would be,
There.
oh, there you are.
Hi there.
How are you?
Good, good. How are you today?
Good. And I see we have good connection and good visual this time, so that makes me very happy.
Much more lucky this time.
Yes, we are. How have you been today?
Very well. It's been a great day. Saw a bunch
Good.
of patients today, and I also got a massage this afternoon from my massage therapist, which is wonderful.
Oh,
Thing to do.
spoiled.
Yes, so I'm all relaxed.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. So I was telling our viewers, I'm not sure if you were able to catch that. I am a big fan of 5 elements, and I the questionnaire on the book Between Heaven and Earth, I use that a lot with my patients to get them to bring into consciousness more their personality and traits in relation to the 5 elements. And I think that's such a fun way to bring that into awareness for them. But I am so excited to learn and hear what you have to share with us, and your history, and a little bit more about the lecture that you're going to be presenting this year at the FSOMA Conference.
Well, thank you. I do love that book, Between Heaven and Earth. Ephraim Korngold and Harriet Beinfeld wrote a great book, and it's a very good starter point for people to understand a little bit about the elements and how these elements manifest in people in psychological ways and emotional ways, as well as just the physical side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole lot more to 5-element acupuncture diagnosis in terms of that as a starting point. There's all kinds of other really cool things about 5-element acupuncture diagnosis, and I'm going to touch on a lot of those things in my lecture. For one thing, we talk about how the color and the sound and the odor and the emotion of the 5 elements really helps determine what we call the causative factor of disease, or the CF for short. So the CF is the element that originally went out of balance. And this happens to everybody by the age of 7 at the very latest, usually earlier in life than that. And so whatever element is the original element that goes out of balance is the one that shows up in terms of these signs. So if your element that's out of balance is earth, then a yellow color will appear on your face, very often right at the temples, just like a hue off the face. It's a color that we are trained to see in 5-element diagnosis. And really anyone who's practicing TCM can learn to do this. This is not a difficult thing to do. I have taught TCM practitioners how to do 5-element acupuncture diagnosis. And when the color appears, the yellow color appears on the face, when the earth element goes out of balance also, there appears a certain sound of a person's voice, what we call the singing sound. So the sound of their voice changes into this kind of lilting up and down singing sound that is part of a person's natural sound. So we have all the 5 elements within us, you know, we have all the 5 colors. Somebody can have all different colors on their face, but the predominant color that stays is going to be from the original element that went out of balance. The predominant sound of a person's voice, like when they're under stress, they're going to sound like a singing sound. When they're just, you know, talking about anything of an emotional nature, they're going to be having a singing sound. And their tendency is to revert back to that singing sound.
Wow, how amazing.
Yeah.
Now that you're talking about sound of voice, my voice has changed drastically throughout my life. And for me, it sounds hoarse right now, and sometimes it can get deeper. But I remember my first acupuncturist had a problem with my tone of voice when I first started with her. She would tease me because it sounded like she said it sounded like I was constantly like baby talking, or that more like immature, like, oh, wow, what, you know, I don't know, that type of, I don't know if that would be what you would consider singing voice. But I have noticed that it's now much hoarser, and there are moments, especially when I get very stressed out, it sounds very deep.
Yeah, you don't seem to have that high baby voice you just imitated anymore. And your regular voice, it does sound deeper. But I think people's voices do go deeper as they get older anyway. I've talked to singers who, you know, used to be a soprano or a mezzo soprano, and then their voice goes down, you know, and they're singing at a little lower octave as they get older. So I think that does happen naturally. But the type of sound I'm talking about isn't really in terms of the height or the depth of your voice in terms of pitch. It's really more to do with the sound, like a groaning sound, you know, of a voice for the water element, you know. And a person's voice may sound like they're talking with water in their throat, kind of thing. Yeah. A lot of saliva, or something like they're talking underwater almost halfway, that kind of thing. So singing sound is more like a soothing sound. I'll go into all of this, you know, into more depth in my lecture, of course, and I don't want to give away the whole lecture now to our audience, but I just want to whet their appetite for what I'm about to share, you know. And I think it's very exciting that I started to talk about the color and the sound, and, you know, there's the emotion too. And the emotion, it's so interesting to think that our emotional makeup has been determined by which element goes out of balance the first one. So, you know, that it can happen many, many times that an element goes in and out of balance in our lives, in our young lives. It may be thousands of times in most cases. But it's like that straw that broke the camel's back, you know. It's like that first time when that element goes out of balance and doesn't come back in balance. That's the one that doesn't go back in balance, that stays out of balance. That becomes your causative factor at that point.
How fascinating. Oh, sorry, I think I got some feedback.
I don't hear it.
No? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So the age of 7, that's such an interesting age. And I think at the age of 7, it's a very important age, as it is for us as humans and as people. We're transitioning into being more individual and speaking up a little bit more about what we want, what we don't want. So I find that fascinating that you mentioned the age of 7 is when that first element goes out of balance.
Yeah, certainly by the age of 7, you know, and it can happen earlier. I've seen it in children at the age of 3 or 4. It can happen quite early in life. There's actually one patient I trained with Professor J.R. Worsley in England. And so we did a lot of consultations together, and had an opportunity to, you know, bring patients to him because I worked in the faculty clinic there. I got a faculty appointment when I graduated, which was awesome to be able to study directly with him for so long. I was over there in England with him for a total of 7 years.
Oh my.
Out of all those 7 years, there was only one time when I actually had a patient that he said that she was born with her wood causative factor, her gallbladder causative factor. So, sometimes we talk about which one of the two meridians it is within the element. Usually we just identify the element. So the wood element in her, she was born jaundiced, and he said that he could tell that she had this causative factor from birth. But typically, no. Typically, it happens after birth, and very much a product of our environment as well as some whatever inherited tendencies we do have. So if you're in an environment where there's a lot of shouting and a lot of anger going on, in your household, and you grow up with that, I guess there's a little bit more of a tendency for that to lead to an imbalance in the wood element as your primary element imbalance. And so the other elements. So they each have, it's so fascinating to understand a person from what their childhood was like as well, and understand how that plays into who they are today.
Amazing, incredible. And what led you to, first of all, what led you into studying acupuncture and then specializing in 5 elements?
Well, how much time do we have? I was very fortunate in that I was exposed to acupuncture fairly early age. So I was at Yale University studying in a economics and political science major, going to go to law school. That was my goal. And halfway through, my 4-year degree, I found acupuncture. Not by chance, really, because my mother had gotten engaged to this man who became my stepfather. He was a plastic surgeon who was kind of like a throwback to the 60s kind of guy. And he had studied acupuncture with Worsley in the first American cohort back in 1971, I think, 72. And he wanted initially to do his own anesthesia acupuncture for his plastic surgery patients. And of course, he found out that 5-element acupuncture really had very little to do with anesthesia, and it was all about treating the whole person, body, mind, and spirit, and getting to the root cause with the causative factor. And he was fascinated. So for fun, he was practicing 5-element acupuncture a couple of half days a week in his practice in St. Louis, Missouri. He was a very busy plastic surgeon, head of plastic surgery at the hospital there. And, he got into a very serious road traffic accident and head-on collision, broke every single bone in his body, including a skull fracture and severe brain injury. And after 2 years of going to the best surgeons and doctors, they said there was nothing more they could do for him. And he was still a vegetable, mentally and physically. And Worsley found out about it and offered to treat him. And so he went to England to be treated by Worsley, and Worsley treated him every other day for about 6 weeks. And he went from being like this vegetable person to being like himself again, transformed in like 6 weeks. So that was really, really, really cool. I did not know him yet at that time. It was very moving story that I heard when by the time I met him, his first wife had already actually divorced him. She was tired of taking care of him after the 2 years not getting better, and she had no hope that he would get better. So she put him on a plane to England to be treated by Worsley, and then she divorced him. But he got better, and in another 6 months of treatment, less and less frequently, until Worsley said he was going to hold his treatments. He continued to do well and get better and stronger. And then he came back to Miami, where my family is from, and that's where he met my mother, and he, told me this amazing story, which I honestly was amazed by, but I never wanted acupuncture. He offered it to me because he was treating my mother and my brother and my sister. I'm the oldest of three. And everybody was telling me, Michael, you've got to try this acupuncture. And I'm like, I am afraid of needles. And I have nothing wrong with me. So leave me alone. And I just didn't want anything to do with it, although I thought it was, okay for them. I didn't really believe in it, honestly, either. I came from a very scientific background and it didn't understand it. And so to me, it made no sense and it was nothing I needed to try. But I was a really serious basketball player, Natalia. I was very, very into my basketball back then. I was recruited to play basketball at Yale. And I was, between surgeries on my knee. And I had had a severe accident in high school basketball. I busted my ACL, my anterior cruciate ligament, completely shattered it. And so after the second surgery, and I was recovering and rehabilitating and trying to get back into playing, and I was practicing, and I got a case of patellar tendonitis in my good knee because I was favoring my bad knee. Yeah, so I was just jumping mostly with my other knee. And I was very despondent. I came home from basketball practice and my mother said, why don't you let Marcy take a look at it? Marcy is my stepfather, the acupuncturist, and he's a doctor and he could tell you what's wrong with you. And I said, okay, I'll let him do that. I'll let him at least look at it. And he looked at it and he touched my patellar tendon and he said, does it hurt right here? And he pressed, and I was like, I was ready to jump off the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really hurts right there. And he said, well, that's the patellar tendon and you have patellar tendonitis. And that's easy to treat with acupuncture. So in 2 treatments, he cured my patellar tendonitis with acupuncture. It was amazing. I was jumping as high as ever, dunking the basketball again, and I was thrilled. And then he told me a little bit about what 5-element acupuncture was and how it was originally used as preventative medicine thousands of years ago in China, and how it treats the whole person and how it treats the root cause. And he said, if you just want me to treat you for wellness and prevention, now that your knee is better, I'd be happy to do that. And I said, well, I'm not scared of needles anymore. And you really got my attention when you fixed my knee in 2 treatments. So yes, go ahead, do whatever. And I just had, the most amazing feeling of well-being after my acupuncture treatments to treat my causative factor. And I just loved it. I wanted to help other people feel the same way or similar, and I just thought, well, gee, I could be a lawyer and I could, be successful and make a lot of money and do that. But this was just something that just called me, and I just needed to change the career path I was on. And I've been doing it for 35 years and I love it so much.
Wonderful. That's such a beautiful story. And I resonate with what you said. When I started getting acupuncture, I was around the age of 18. And I didn't know what I wanted to do for a while. And when I found acupuncture and the way that it made me feel, not only did it fix all the physical issues that I had, but spiritually, energetically, mentally, emotionally, I was just like, more people need this. I wanted to just share that with as many people as possible.
Yes.
Make the world a better place.
That's great. What a great story. Thank you for sharing your story too.
Yeah, how wonderful. And so you've been teaching 5-element acupuncture for a while, correct?
I have. I've been teaching it for many, many years. I was teaching in Worsley School in England first after I graduated and a couple of years into it. And then I came to Florida, back to Florida and to Jacksonville, Florida. And I started a school here, 5-element based curriculum, but we taught TCM as well and everything, that you need to pass the state exam, and we had entry-level programs for 7 years. We ran the school here, and then it was time to move on. And so now I'm the director of what I call the 5-Element Institute. I've been doing the 5-Element Institute since 2010, and we just teach postgraduate courses. So for people who are already licensed in acupuncture, a lot of TCM practitioners who want to learn 5 elements. And I give these lectures from time to time at FSOMA as well to help promote, that there's a lot of different styles of acupuncture and they all work and they're all great. And for those people who really are wanting to learn more of the 5-element tradition, I love being able to share that and pass that on, because I feel the depth of it, it really helps us go deeper to the spirit level within a person, to be able to heal them on a deeper level and to connect with people more emotionally. It's just so easy once you understand what element a person is, to understand their emotion that's behind that element. It's like a golden key to understand them as a person at a deeper level.
Oh, beautiful. And what's that website that you have your institute in that people can just go and check out and register for your classes online as well?
It's www.5elementinstitute.com, and it's the number 5. So number 5elementinstitute.com. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. And so at the conference this year, you're going to be talking about, you said, the tone of voice, the colors in the face, the way that people express themselves as well.
Yes, their emotions, the primary emotion. What's your predominant emotion? That's an interesting thing for all of us to look at ourselves and think about as well. Because, we all have that primary emotion, one of the 5 elements. Each of the 5 elements has its emotion. And as I said, we're a composite of all 5 elements. So it's not like we're just one-dimensional and we only feel one emotion. We feel them all. But there's usually one that if we look at ourselves very objectively, we can say, this is the emotion that's more out of balance in my case. And the same for all of our patients, to be able to assess our patients like that. And that comes from really gaining a rapport with the patients and really talking with them at a deeper level and understanding their emotional self. And of course, then the odor, the 5 odors. And what's so interesting is that when the element that goes out of balance, the original element, stays out of balance. So those predominantly, the odor, the color, the sound, and the emotion all are within the same element. So if earth is the first element, like in my example, that goes out of balance, the person's going to have a singing sound of their voice, and they're going to have a yellow color on their face. They're going to have emotions going to be sympathy or worry or both, and the odor is going to be fragrant. So I'll go into more depth in my lecture in describing all of those, so people have a better roadmap to being able to figure out what is the root of the root. What is the root of their TCM pattern diagnosis? Well, the root of that is going to be what element first went out of balance, because that's where it starts, which one first stayed out of balance, and then whatever pattern develops from there, you see?
Yeah, that is so amazing. Hopefully I'll be able to sneak into your lecture and learn a little bit from you.
Well, good.
Yeah. In the meantime, between now and the conference, I wanted to see if there was a book that you could recommend our viewers, and also one tip for them as practitioners. Maybe it could be for themselves personally, or something that they can use with their clients. I'm sure that you have many, but if there was just one tip that you can share.
Oh, well, that's a good question. Well, I think that just to search and to seek to understand your patient at a deeper level, the tip I would say is to try to deepen your rapport with your patients. Try to go into a little more depth with them about when they tell you things. Ask them questions that are leading questions, not questions that have yes or no answers to them, but questions that are opening, what I call opening questions, a question that opens them up to really share a little more of themselves. And if you give them the time and your attention, and you ask them in a way that they see that you really want to know what's going on with them, I think that's really so helpful to have, for the patient to know that they have that safe place that they can open up and share about themselves, and that they have someone who really wants to hear what's going on, and give them that depth of rapport. And I think that's always something that benefits the healing relationship.
I agree. A lot of times I've had patients tell me that it's the first time that they have the space to be able to share their story. And they've gone to many doctors, and it's just the first time that they're in front of a physician that can actually spend time with them and listen to them. And sometimes even having that starts changing their healing process, creating
Absolutely.
that space inside of them. Yeah.
Yeah, the healing process is so much to do with the energy exchange between practitioner and patient. So if we become the needle, if we become that healing force in their life, in ourself, before we ever even put the needle in to them, if we already have that healing relationship established with them. So I take a lot of time in my first consultation with patients. Before I ever start treating them, I take at least an hour to sit down with them and talk with them, get to know them as a person, and figure out what is their 5-element diagnosis. So my tip is just to develop that rapport, and after my lecture, hopefully then be inspired to look for that within the patient. What is their 5-element diagnosis, to help you as a key to understanding your patient so much better, and to know what they need emotionally to heal them. And then you'll also have a key to what element to treat, so if it's the earth element is their causative factor, then you're going to be working on the stomach and spleen meridians quite a bit, because those are your earth meridians, and so on. So it's a key to developing yourself as a practitioner in a deeper way. And as far as books to learn, if people want to do further reading on it, you asked me that question.
Yes.
I think Constitutional Acupuncture by John and Angela Hicks. They were colleagues of mine at the college in England, where I trained and where I worked in the faculty clinic with both of them. And that's a very good book for explaining it to a TCM practitioner. I think it's a textbook, so it's pretty thick. And you can't just pick it up and read it through, really quickly. It takes a lot of study time. But for those people who are inspired and want to go further with it, I really recommend that book very highly.
Perfect. Beautiful. So thank you so much for your time and your patience. I know I was a little bit late for
No
our
problem.
talk today. And I really look forward to meeting you. And could you share your website with us again for those that are
Sure.
watching?
It's www.5elementinstitute.com, 5elementinstitute.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. And hopefully I will see you soon at the conference.
I'll look forward to it, Natalia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.